I repaired the tap on the yacht, and my son-in-law contemptuously said, "Plumbers have no place here." He mocked me, considering me a pathetic pensioner on a rented boat, trying to look rich. Then I looked him in the eye and said, this is my yacht." Their reaction was priceless. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The brass fittings caught the afternoon sun like scattered coins across the yacht's pristine deck. I stood near the railing of the Serenity, hands clasped behind my back, watching my family approach the gangway. The Newport Marina stretched out before us, a forest of masts swaying gently in the May breeze. My heart hammered against my ribs. 2 months of planning had led to this moment. Derek stepped aboard first, his designer loafers clicking against the teak deck. His eyes swept across the yacht's length, taking in the polished chrome, the leather seating arranged beneath the canopy, the sophisticated navigation equipment gleaming in the pilot house. His jaw dropped for a split second before his familiar smirk returned. "Well, well," he said, running his manicured hand along the butter-soft leather of the main seating area.
"How the hell did you afford this floating palace?" "Ronald." The words hit me like a slap. Not Dad, not even Ron, Ronald, always Ronald.
Delivered with that particular tone that made my name sound like something distasteful. Lindsay followed him aboard, her designer handbag clutched against her chest. She glanced around nervously, her cheeks flushing pink. "Dad, please tell me you didn't blow your entire retirement savings on this." Her voice carried that familiar note of embarrassment I'd grown to dread. "It's beautiful, Mr. Parker," Sarah offered gently, William nodding beside her as they stepped onto the deck. "Thank you for inviting us." Derek was already exploring, his fingers trailing across the control panel like he owned it. "This navigation system alone costs more than most people make in a year." "Jesus, Ronald, what were you thinking?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Playing yacht club member at your age?" My chest tightened. I'd rehearsed this moment countless times, imagining Lindsay's joy when I revealed the surprise. Instead, I watched her fidget with her purse strap, avoiding my eyes. I thought it would be nice for the family to spend some time together. I managed, my voice steady despite the storm building inside me. "Time together on what? Your midlife crisis?" Derek opened a storage compartment, peering inside like he was appraising inventory.
"I mean, I get it.
You want to feel successful, but this is just embarrassing. How much debt did you take on for this fantasy?" Lindsay touched his arm lightly. "Derek, maybe."
"No, honey."
"This is concerning." He turned to face me fully, his arms crossed. "Your father's clearly made some questionable financial decisions. We should probably have a family meeting about managing his assets before he loses everything." The words hung in the salt air like poison. Managing his assets as if I was some doddering fool who'd stumbled into a yacht dealership with a credit card. "The rental company assured me everything was in order," I said carefully, keeping my voice level. The lie tasted bitter, but it was necessary for now. "Rental?" Derek's eyebrows shot up. "Well, that's slightly less insane, though still pretty ridiculous for someone living on Social Security." My hands clenched behind my back. Social Security. I'd built 3 companies from nothing, sold them for figures he couldn't comprehend, invested wisely for decades. But I wore khakis and polo shirts, drove a modest sedan, lived in my same small house. To Derek, that made me poor. "Why don't you all explore below deck?"
I suggested, needing space to breathe.
"I'll prepare some refreshments."
"Come on, babe,"
Derek said to Lindsay, already heading toward the cabin entrance. "Let's see how much your dad spent on his little boat adventure." They disappeared below, Derek's voice echoing up through the hatch. "Look at this marble countertop. Unbelievable. Your dad's completely lost it." Lindsay's nervous laughter followed. William approached me quietly. "It really is magnificent, Ronald. The craftsmanship is exceptional." I nodded, grateful for his kindness, but barely hearing him. From below deck came the sound of Derek opening and closing cabinets, his voice a constant commentary of disbelief and derision. Each word felt like a needle under my skin. Sarah joined her husband in exploring while I remained on deck, gripping the brass railing until my knuckles went white. The gentle waves lapped against the hull, but all I could hear was Derek's laughter drifting up from the main cabin, followed by Lindsay's voice. He must have spent a fortune on this rental. It's so unlike him.
Unlike him?
My own daughter discussing me like I was a stranger who'd suddenly developed delusions of grandeur. The sun felt too bright, the breeze too cold. I stared out at the harbour, watching other families enjoying their boats, and wondered if this had been a terrible mistake. But no, I'd planned this perfectly.
They just didn't understand yet.
More laughter from below deck, and my jaw tightened like a vice. The brass compass mounted near the pilot house caught my eye, its polished surface reflecting the afternoon light. I reached out and touched it gently, remembering another day, another moment, when I had touched the same compass and felt nothing but pure joy. 2 months ago, March 22nd, I stood in the showroom at Maritime Luxury Yachts, wearing my best navy suit, the one I'd kept for special occasions. The salesman, a polished young man named Trevor, guided me through the specifications of the Serenity for the 3rd time that week. The master cabin features a queen bed and full bathroom, Trevor explained, his voice professional but warm. The guest cabin has twin bunks that convert to a double, perfect for family trips. I nodded, imagining Derek and Lindsay's faces when they discovered their own private quarters. The yacht stretched 42 feet of pristine fiberglass and chrome, every surface gleaming under the showroom lights. I ran my hand along the same brass compass, thinking about teaching future grandchildren to navigate by the stars.
And you're certain about the financing terms?
I asked, though I'd already decided. The $2.8 million check was folded in my jacket pocket, drawn on an account Derek couldn't imagine existed. Absolutely, Mr. Parker. Full payment today means immediate delivery after the safety inspection and registration. Trevor smiled. Your family's gonna love this surprise, my family. I'd been planning this moment since Lindsay's birthday the previous month, when she'd mentioned missing our old fishing trips.
I wish we could just escape on a boat somewhere, she'd said, looking tired from Derek's constant complaints about their finances.
Here was the solution. A floating sanctuary where we could rebuild our relationship away from Derek's endless need to diminish everyone around him. I'd even researched family-friendly routes along the New England coast, imagining weekends where Lindsay could rediscover her love of the water. I'd like to add some personal touches, I told Trevor. Family photos in the main cabin, maybe install a sound system for music during dinners. Of course, we can coordinate with our interior design team. I signed the papers with a steady hand, my excitement building with each signature. This wasn't just a yacht purchase. It was an investment in healing. The money came from Margaret's life insurance. Funds I'd been saving for something meaningful. What could be more meaningful than bringing my daughter back? Trevor handed me the keys, 2 small pieces of metal that represented months of careful planning. Will you be taking possession today? Next month, I said. I want to surprise them by presenting it as a rental first, then revealing the truth during our trip. The strategy had seemed brilliant. Then let them enjoy the yacht without the pressure of knowing its true cost, then reveal the gift when they were already in love with it. I'd imagine Lindsay's tears of joy, her gratitude, maybe even Derek's grudging respect. Standing there in the showroom holding those keys, I'd felt more hopeful than I had in years. My modest lifestyle had served its purpose. Everyone underestimated my resources. The surprise would be complete. Your daughter is going to be so proud, Trevor had said, shaking my hand. Proud? Yes, I'd imagine that too. Present moment. I opened my eyes, the memory dissolving like morning mist. The harbour stretched before me, unchanged, but everything felt different now. Below deck, I could still hear Derek's voice, though the words were muffled by distance and deck planking. Footsteps approached on the teak deck behind me. I straightened my shoulders, feeling something shift inside my chest. The hope that had carried me through 2 months of planning was crystallizing into something harder, colder. The generous father who'd signed those papers in March was learning a valuable lesson about the nature of gratitude. I turned as my family emerged from below deck, Derrick's face flushed with what I now recognized as contemptuous amusement. The brass compass caught the light again, but this time it reminded me of something else entirely. Navigation required knowing exactly where you stood before plotting your course.
Ronald, this is absolutely magnificent.
William's voice carried genuine appreciation as he emerged from the yacht stairway, his weathered businessman's hands trailing along the polished handrail. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. You've chosen something truly special. His words felt like cool water on a burn. I straightened slightly, releasing my death grip on the brass railing. Sarah followed behind him, her silver hair catching the afternoon light, eyes bright with sincere admiration. "The woodwork below is stunning," she added, settling her light cardigan around her shoulders.
That mahogany dining table.
"It's museum quality," Derrick snorted, stepping up behind his parents, with Lindsay close beside him.
Yeah, well, when you're spending someone else's money on a rental, might as well go big, right?
He gestured expansively at the yacht's gleaming surfaces. "Dad probably spent more on this weekend than Ronald makes in 6 months." The comparison hit like a physical blow. William stiffened almost imperceptibly, while Sarah's smile faltered for just a moment. Lindsay let out that nervous laugh I'd grown to dread, the sound sharp against the gentle lapping of waves. "Derrick," William said quietly, but his son was already moving past them, running his fingers along the chrome fittings like he was appraising merchandise.
I mean, look at this sound system, Derrick continued, touching buttons on the entertainment console.
Top of the line. The rental company probably charges extra for every feature. What's this costing you, Ronald? $2,000 for the weekend?
3? My jaw clenched.
3,000 wouldn't cover the monthly dock fees.
That's beautiful, Dad, Lindsay said.
But her tone carried that familiar note of worried embarrassment. Though maybe next time we could do something more practical like miniature golf or a chain restaurant. Something appropriately modest for her father's presumed circumstances. Should we head below for lunch? I managed, my voice steady despite the storm building inside my chest.
I've prepared some refreshments. Lunch on the yacht?
Derrick clapped his hands together mockingly. Living the dream, Ronald. Too bad it's just for a weekend. William's frown deepened as we moved toward the salon's entrance. I led the way down the few steps into the main cabin, the mahogany dining table gleaming under soft overhead lighting. The setting was perfect. Bone china, crystal glasses, silver utensils arranged with careful precision.
Everything I'd planned to make this moment special. Oh my, Sarah breathed, taking in the elegant table setting.
Ronald, this is lovely.
You've gone to such trouble.
No trouble at all, I replied, pulling out chairs for the ladies. Sarah sat gracefully while Lindsay perched nervously on the edge of her seat. Derrick remained standing, examining the built-in bar with obvious covetousness. Fully stocked too, I see. Premium brands. He lifted a bottle of aged scotch, checking the label. This bottle alone probably costs more than most people's car payments. "Derrick," William said more firmly this time. "What? I'm just appreciating the finer things in life." Derrick's grin was sharp-edged. "Not everyone gets to play millionaire for a weekend." The words hung in the air like smoke. Sarah busied herself with her napkin, while William studied his son with growing disapproval. Lindsay's face flushed pink, caught between defending her husband and apologizing for him. I served the meal mechanically. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, a crisp white wine that cost more than Derrick imagined. Each plate placed with careful precision, while my mind churned with memories of the yacht showroom, of Trevor's encouraging words, of my naive hope that this gift would bridge the growing chasm between my daughter and me. "This is delicious," William offered, clearly trying to restore some civility to the gathering. "Dad always was a good cook," Lindsay said softly.
Yeah, well, when you have all day and nothing else to do, Derrick's voice trailed off meaningfully as he cut his salmon.
"Retirement must be nice. No responsibilities, no pressure to provide for anyone." The fork trembled slightly in my hand.
No pressure to provide.
I'd provided for 3 decades, built companies from nothing, created wealth beyond his comprehension.
Now, I was offering my greatest treasure, this floating sanctuary purchased with my beloved Margaret's memory, and receiving nothing but contempt in return.
Derek! William's voice carried a warning now. Perhaps. What, Dad? Derek looked up from his plate, eyes bright with challenge. I'm just making conversation.
Isn't that what family dinners are about?
The silence stretched taut as a piano wire. Sarah reached for her wine glass with slightly shaking fingers.
Lindsay stared at her food like it might provide escape.
William's jaw worked silently, a father watching his son reveal himself as someone he didn't recognize. And I sat at the head of my $2.8 million table, serving my ungrateful family a meal they'd never appreciate. Feeling something cold and calculating crystallize in my chest, where warmth used to live, Derek raised his glass in a mock toast. To family adventures we can't afford. The clink of Derek's glass against the table marked the end of civilized pretense. William sat down his fork with deliberate precision, the sound sharp in the sudden quiet. Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. That's enough. My voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk. You will stop this behavior immediately. Derek's eyebrows shot up in theatrical surprise. Behavior? I'm just being honest about the situation. Someone in this family should acknowledge reality. The reality, I said, each word measured and controlled, is that you're a guest on this yacht. You will show appropriate respect, or you will leave. Lindsay's intake of breath was audible. She'd never heard me speak to Derek with such firmness. Neither had Derek, judging by the way his smirk faltered for a fraction of a second before returning full force.
Guest? Derek laughed, but it sounded forced now. Come on, Ronald.
We're family. I can't express concern about your financial decisions. Your concern? I replied, setting my own utensils down with careful precision. Sounds remarkably like mockery. William cleared his throat uncomfortably. Son, perhaps we should. Perhaps we should what? Derek's voice rose slightly, his composure cracking. Pretend Ronald isn't making questionable choices. Pretend this yacht rental isn't way beyond his means. He gestured around the elegant cabin. Look at this place. The rental fees alone could probably fund his groceries for months. The calculation in his eyes was naked now, measuring cost against my perceived worth, finding me desperately wanting. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, the picture of smug superiority. I built a successful IT consulting firm from nothing, he continued, his voice gaining confidence.
I understand money, understand value, and this.
He waved dismissively at the crystal in China. This is someone trying to play in a league where he doesn't belong. Sarah's face had gone pale. William's knuckles were white where he gripped his napkin. Even they could see their son had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But Lindsay, my own daughter, nodded slightly, a tiny motion barely perceptible. But I caught it, she agreed with him.
After everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd given, she saw me through his eyes, a pathetic old man pretending to wealth he didn't possess.
The betrayal hit harder than any of Derek's insults.
I think, I said, my voice deadly quiet.
You should excuse yourself from this table. Derek's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. Excuse myself from a rented yacht? He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Maybe I will. Suddenly the air feels a bit stifling in here. He moved toward the stairs leading to the deck, pausing at the threshold. Don't worry about cleaning up, Ronald. I'm sure the rental company has people for that. Wouldn't want you to strain yourself. His footsteps echoed on the deck above us, deliberately heavy, claiming space that wasn't his to claim. The salon fell silent, except for the gentle creaking of the yacht against its mooring. William spoke first, his voice thick with embarrassment.
Ronald, I apologize.
That was completely unacceptable. Inexcusable, Sarah added, her eyes bright with unshed tears.
I don't know what's gotten into him.
Lindsay said nothing, staring at her untouched salmon like it held the secrets of the universe. When she finally looked up, her eyes were defensive. He's just protective of family finances, she said quietly. We've been talking about buying a house, and money is tight, and seeing this... She gestured helplessly around the cabin. It's hard to understand the priorities. The priorities. My priority had been creating a memory, a gift, a bridge back to the daughter I was losing. Her priority was maintaining her husband's comfortable illusions about his superiority.
I stood slowly, gathering plates with steady hands, despite the earthquake happening inside my chest.
Of course, I understand completely, but I understood more than she realized. I understood that my generous father's heart had been naive, that love wasn't enough to overcome contempt, that respect couldn't be bought with gifts.
I also understood that Derek had just made the gravest mistake of his life.
From above deck came the sound of cabinet doors opening and closing, Derek exploring areas he had no business accessing, making himself at home on what he thought was someone else's yacht. The irony would have been amusing if it hadn't been so infuriating. "I'll just tidy up," I said, stacking plates with mechanical precision. "Why don't you all enjoy the afternoon air on deck?" As they filed out, leaving me alone with the ruins of my carefully planned meal, I allowed myself one moment of pure crystalline rage. Then I began to plan. Derek wanted to play games with someone he thought was beneath him. He was about to discover just how wrong he could be. The sound of Derek's footsteps retreated across the deck above us, each step deliberate and heavy with wounded pride. I continued stacking plates with mechanical precision, but my mind was racing.
That look in his eyes when he'd stood from the table. I'd seen
it before in boardrooms when lesser men realized they'd been outmaneuvered. "I should probably check on him," Lindsay said softly, half rising from her chair. "Let him cool off," William advised, his voice carrying the weight of paternal disappointment. "He needs time to think about his behavior." Sarah reached across the table to touch my hand.
"Ronald, I'm so sorry."
"I don't know what's gotten into him lately, but I knew Derek couldn't tolerate being corrected, especially in front of his parents.
Men like him didn't accept boundaries.
They tested them, pushed against them, found ways around them. Above deck, his footsteps had stopped. Then came the soft sound of a door opening and closing. The guest head probably, or perhaps he was exploring areas he had no business being in.
"He's under a lot of pressure at work," Lindsay offered weakly.
The consulting business is competitive. William's expression suggested he wasn't buying his daughter-in-law's excuses any more than I was. Pressure is no excuse for disrespecting your host. I listened carefully to the sounds from above and beyond. Water running briefly, cabinets opening and closing, the soft scrape of something metallic. Derek was definitely exploring, touching things, claiming space.
"Should we move to the deck for coffee?"
Sarah suggested brightly, clearly hoping to change the atmosphere. "The weather is so lovely." "Excellent idea," I agreed, though my attention remained focused on the subtle sounds of Derek's movements. Something about his exploration felt different now, purposeful rather than curious. More metallic sounds. A faint grinding noise that made me pause mid-motion with the crystal glasses in my hands. That wasn't the sound of someone simply looking around. "Dad!" Lindsay's voice seemed to come from far away.
"Are you all right?"
"Fine," I replied automatically, setting the glasses down carefully. The grinding sound had stopped, replaced by the soft closing of what sounded like a cabinet door. Derek's footsteps resumed above us, moving back toward the main deck area. A few minutes later, he appeared at the top of the stairs, looking perfectly composed. If anything, he seemed more relaxed than when he'd left. "Sorry about that," he said, sliding back into his seat with a slight smile. "Just needed a moment to appreciate the craftsmanship. This really is an impressive boat." The complete reversal in his tone sent warning signals through my nervous system. Derek didn't apologize. Derek didn't admit he was wrong, and Derek certainly didn't compliment things he'd been mocking minutes earlier. "Feeling better?" William asked cautiously. "Much." Derek picked up his water glass, looking remarkably pleased with himself.
"Actually, I was thinking maybe I should help with the cleanup. It's the least I can do after." "Well, you know."
Lindsay's face brightened immediately. "That's sweet of you, honey." But I was studying Derek's expression, noting the way his eyes avoided mine, the slight upturn at the corner of his mouth that suggested private satisfaction rather than genuine remorse. "I could wash up the dishes in the galley," he continued. "Get familiar with the boat systems. Might be helpful if we run into any problems." "Problems?" The word hung in the air like smoke from a distant fire. "That's very thoughtful," Sarah said warmly. "Very thoughtful indeed." Derek offering to help with household chores was about as likely as snow in August. But there he sat, the picture of reformed behavior practically radiating false humility. I stood slowly.
Every instinct screaming that something was wrong.
"Why don't we all move to the deck first? The dishes can wait." "Oh, come on, Ronald." Derek's smile was bright as polished chrome. "Let me make up for being such an ass earlier, I insist." He was already moving toward the galley area, and I found myself following, drawn by a horrible certainty that I was about to discover exactly what those metallic sounds had been. "See?" Derek called cheerfully from the galley, his voice carrying that false brightness I was beginning to recognize as his tell. "Everything's perfectly." "Oh!" The word dropped like a stone into still water.
"Oh, what?"
Lindsay asked, moving to join him. I was already moving past her, something cold settling in my stomach like winter fog. Derek stood at the galley sink, his hand frozen on the faucet handle, water streaming from the tap in an uncontrolled torrent.
"It seems to be stuck," he said, tugging at the handle with theatrical effort.
"Won't turn off properly. Must be one of those quirky old boat problems." But I was looking at the base of the faucet where the chrome finish showed fresh scratches. Deep gouges that hadn't been there this morning when I'd prepared coffee. Scratches that could only come from someone using excessive force or the wrong tool. "Let me take a look," I said quietly, moving Derek aside. The handle moved stiffly under my grip, the internal mechanism grinding in a way that spoke of damaged parts. This wasn't wear and tear. This wasn't even aggressive use. This was deliberate destruction disguised as an accident. "Probably just need some WD-40, Derek suggested helpfully. "These marine fixtures take a beating." I knelt to examine the base more closely, running my fingers along the gouged chrome. The scratches formed a pattern consistent with plier marks. Someone had gripped the faucet with considerable force, twisting until something gave way inside. "Dad, can you fix it?" Lindsay asked, genuine concern in her voice. "It's definitely broken," I said, standing slowly. "The internal valve mechanism has been damaged," Derek nodded sympathetically.
"Rental equipment, probably gets rough treatment from previous guests."
Good thing it happened now instead of in the middle of the night. The casualness of his explanation, the way he immediately shifted blame to imaginary previous renters, confirmed what I already knew, but confronting him here in front of everyone would accomplish nothing except creating a scene. "I should contact the marina," I said carefully. "See about getting a repair technician out here on a Saturday." Derek shook his head. "Good luck with that. You might be stuck with it for the weekend." The barely concealed satisfaction in his voice made my hands clench involuntarily. He was enjoying this, not just the inconvenience he'd caused, but the opportunity to play the helpful, sympathetic family member while I dealt with rental problems. William approached, examining the faucet with a businessman's eye for detail.
"That's odd."
"The damage looks almost deliberate." Derek's smile never wavered. "Salt air is murder on these fittings. Probably been corroding for months." But William was frowning now, his engineer's background making him see what Derek hoped to hide.
"Ronald, this looks like tool marks."
"See these gouges here? Could be from previous repair attempts," Derek suggested quickly. "You know how it is. Someone tries to fix something themselves, makes it worse." The lie came so smoothly, so naturally, that I almost admired its audacity. Derek was betting that his word as family would carry more weight than evidence, that no one would seriously consider. He might deliberately sabotage his host's property. "I'll need to check the boat's maintenance manual," I said finally. "See what the manufacturer recommends for this type of failure." What I actually needed was to check the security cameras I'd had installed last month. High-definition recordings that would show exactly what Derek had done and when. "Want me to help look?" Derek offered.
"I'm pretty good with technical stuff."
"No need," I replied, forcing a smile.
"I know where everything is."
He shrugged, the picture of disappointed helpfulness. "Whatever you think is best. Just trying to pitch in." As the family moved back toward the deck area, Derek lingered for a moment. ostensibly checking that the water was fully turned off, but I caught him glancing around the galley with the satisfied air of someone admiring his handiwork. "Funny how these things happen," he said conversationally. "One minute everything's fine, the next minute you've got a repair bill." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. This was just the beginning. Derek had discovered he could damage my property with impunity, safe in the knowledge that his family connection protected him from suspicion. He was about to learn how wrong he could be. I waited until the others were settled on deck, their voices drifting down through the open hatches. Then I moved quietly toward the navigation station where the security system controls were hidden behind an innocuous panel. Derek wanted to play games. He'd just challenged someone who'd been playing at a professional level while he was still learning to tie his shoes. The navigation room was tucked behind the main cabin, a compact space lined with electronic equipment that most guests never saw. I slipped inside quietly, closing the door behind me with a soft click. The multiple monitors came to life at the touch of a button, their screens flooding the small space with blue-white light. 8 camera feeds displayed the yacht's interior and deck areas in crisp, high definition. I'd had the system installed last month after reading about yacht thefts in the marina, a precaution that was about to pay dividends in ways I'd never imagined. My fingers moved across the control panel with practiced efficiency, scrolling back to 3:50 p.m. The time stamp in the corner read 15:55:23 when Derek first appeared on camera. 3. The one covering the guest head and galley area. There he was, stepping into frame with that same casual confidence he'd displayed all afternoon. At first, his movements were perfectly normal, opening cabinet doors, examining the yacht's amenities, with the entitled curiosity of someone who believed everything belonged to him. Then he approached the faucet. I leaned closer to the monitor, watching Derek test the handle with gentle pressure. The faucet worked perfectly, water flowing smoothly when he turned it on, stopping cleanly when he turned it off. He knew it worked.
He knew there was nothing wrong with it.
What happened next made my blood run cold. Derek glanced toward the door, confirming he was alone. Then he gripped the faucet handle with both hands and twisted. Not the gentle turn of normal use, but a violent wrenching motion that made the camera shake slightly from the transmitted vibration. The timestamp read 15:52:41. When he did it again, this time bracing his foot against the cabinet for leverage, I could see his face clearly now, the concentration as he applied maximum force, the slight smile of satisfaction when something gave way inside the mechanism. He tested his handiwork, watching water stream uncontrollably from the broken fixture. Perfect. Exactly the kind of accident that would embarrass his host and prove his point about inferior rental equipment. But Derek wasn't finished. Camera 4 caught him opening drawers, searching till he found a dish towel to wipe away any metal shavings from his forced entry. He even ran his finger along the base of the faucet, checking for evidence of his sabotage. The methodical cleanup told me everything I needed to know about Derek's character. This wasn't an impulsive act. It was calculated vandalism designed to humiliate me in front of my family. At 15:54:12, he stepped back to admire his work, that satisfied smirk spreading across his face like oil on water. He'd found the perfect way to put the presumptuous old man in his place, to demonstrate that people like Ronald Parker couldn't really afford the finer things in life. I copied the relevant footage to a portable drive, my movements automatic, while my mind processed the full scope of Derek's betrayal. This wasn't just about a broken faucet. It was about respect, about boundaries, about the fundamental contract between guest and host. From the dining area came the sound of Derek's voice, artificially concerned.
I hope Ronald isn't having too much trouble with that boat problem.
These old rentals can be tricky.
Old rentals.
He was already spinning the narrative, painting me as someone foolish enough to rent a yacht beyond his means, someone who should expect problems with equipment he couldn't afford to buy. The irony would have been amusing if it weren't so infuriating. I ejected the drive and slipped it into my pocket, the the weight of it surprisingly substantial for something so small. Evidence, proof, the kind of documentation that turned accusations into facts. Derek's voice drifted down from above.
Maybe I should go check on him, offer to help.
The false concern in his tone made my jaw clinch. He wanted to help, all right, help himself to a front row seat for my humiliation when I couldn't fix the problem he'd created. I powered down the monitors and stood in the darkness for a moment, listening to the gentle sound of water lapping against the hull. 40 years of business had taught me that evidence without strategy was worthless. Derek had given me the ammunition, but I needed to choose my moment carefully. The sound of footsteps above told me my time for planning was running short. I moved quietly to the yacht's tool locker, selecting a precision wrench set and pipe sealant from the well-organized compartments. My hands worked automatically, gathering what I needed while my mind churned through years of memories. The damaged faucet could be repaired. Marine-grade fixtures were built to withstand far worse than Derek's tantrum. But as I knelt beside the broken mechanism, images flooded back of all the times I'd fixed things for Derek and Lindsay. All the problems I'd solved with my checkbook and my patience, Lindsay's graduate school tuition, $40,000 over 2 years. I'd written those checks gladly, proud of my daughter's ambition to earn her MBA. Derek had been grateful then, or at least he'd performed gratitude convincingly. "You're incredible, Mr. Parker," he'd said, using the formal address that now seemed less like respect and more like distance. Their wedding, $25,000 contribution. The memory stung fresh as I worked the wrench around the faucet's base. I'd insisted on paying for the flowers, the photographer, the upgraded reception venue.
Every father wants his daughter's wedding to be perfect.
I told Margaret's picture that night, wishing she could have been there to see Lindsay in her dress. Down payment on their house, $60,000. That had been just 2 years ago when Derek's business was experiencing a temporary cash flow issue. He'd sat in my modest kitchen, explaining how a larger down payment would secure better financing terms. His humility had seemed genuine, his gratitude effusive.
This means everything to us, Ronald.
"I promise you'll never regret helping us build our future." The broken fixture came apart in my hands, revealing the deliberate damage Derek had inflicted. Twisted metal where smooth curves should be, forced threads that would never turn properly again. Just like the relationship between us, I suppose. Emergency car repairs, $5,000. Lindsay's medical bills, $3,200. The new refrigerator when theirs died. 1-800 Christmas gifts, birthday surprises, anniversary dinners I'd insisted on paying for. The list went on, a decade of generosity that had apparently purchased nothing but contempt. Each act of kindness had been met with Derek's practiced appreciation, his assurances that he'd never forget my support. Yet here I was, kneeling on the floor of my own yacht, repairing damage he'd inflicted out of spite. From above came Derek's voice, louder now. "Should we go check on Ronald? He's been down there quite a while." Lindsay's response was muffled but concerned. Maybe the repair is more complicated than he thought.
More complicated?
Everything was more complicated than it seemed. The yacht they thought was rented. The wealth they assumed I didn't possess. The man they believed was beneath their consideration. I threaded new gaskets into place, my movements precise despite the anger coursing through my veins. This wasn't just about money, though the financial aspect was staggering when I tallied it all. Nearly $140,000 in direct assistance over the years, not counting the smaller gestures, the dinners, the gifts. It was about respect, about the fundamental expectation that kindness would be met with kindness, that generosity would breed gratitude rather than entitlement. Derek's footsteps approached the stairs.
"I'm going to see if he needs a hand."
The faucet mechanism slid back into place with a satisfying click. Water flowed smoothly when I tested it. Better than before, actually. Sometimes damage forced you to rebuild stronger, Ronald. Derek's voice carried that false note of helpful concern. "Everything okay down there?" I stood slowly, wiping my hands on a clean rag while calculating my next move. Derek thought he'd won some small victory by breaking my property. He had no idea that he'd just triggered a war he was spectacularly unprepared to fight. The man approaching to offer his help had never built a business from nothing, had never negotiated million-dollar deals or outmaneuvered competitors who tried to destroy him, had never learned that in real conflict, the person who controls the information controls the outcome. Derek was about to receive an education in exactly what kind of man he'd chosen to cross. "There he is." Derek's voice carried across the dining area with theatrical relief as I stepped up from the lower deck. We were starting to worry.
How'd the repair go?
He was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed in satisfaction, that same smug expression he'd worn when he first stepped aboard. The picture of concerned family member soliciting sympathy for poor Ronald's boat troubles. "The old equipment giving you fits," he continued with mock sympathy. "I was just telling everyone how these rental companies cut corners on maintenance."
Probably haven't serviced that faucet in years.
I set my tablet on the dining table with deliberate precision, watching Derek's face as I pulled out a chair.
Actually, Derek, I'd like to ask you something specific about that faucet. Me? His eyebrows shot up in theatrical innocence.
"I'm no plumber, Ronald, though I did notice the fixture looked pretty corroded when I washed my hands earlier." Lindsay shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Dad, Derek was just trying to help. He mentioned the water pressure seemed off."
Is that what he mentioned?
I kept my voice level, my eyes fixed on Derek's face because I'm curious about exactly what happened when you were down there. Derek's smile never wavered, but something flickered behind his eyes. A split second of calculation before the performance resumed. "Like I said, just use the facilities. Noticed the faucet was acting up, but figured you'd want to handle it yourself." William cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Ronald, perhaps we should focus on getting a repair technician." "Derek," I interrupted quietly, "why did you deliberately break the faucet?" The words dropped into the conversation like stones into still water. Derek's laugh was a beat too late, a fraction too loud. "Break it? Ronald, what are you talking about?"
I didn't break anything. Dad! Lindsay's voice carried a warning edge.
"That's a serious accusation. Derek would never, wouldn't he?" I reached for my tablet, powering it on with steady fingers, because I have some footage that might interest everyone. Derek's confidence faltered for just a moment, a micro-expression of concern before the mask snapped back into place.
Footage? What footage?
"The yacht has a security system," I said calmly, watching his face drain of color. 8 cameras, high definition with audio recording, very thorough coverage. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Derek's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard, but his voice remained steady. "Well, then you'll see exactly what I told you. I used the bathroom, noticed a problem with the faucet, and came back up. We'll see." I agreed, opening the video application. "Let's all take a look together." Sarah leaned forward anxiously.
Ronald, surely this is unnecessary.
"No," William said firmly, his businessman's instincts recognizing something important was happening.
Let's see what the cameras show.
I touched the screen, scrolling to the timestamp. 15:50:23. Derek appeared in perfect clarity, stepping into the guest head with that casual confidence I'd come to despise. "There you are," I said conversationally. "Saturday, May 17th, 3:50 p.m., just after you left our table." Derek's jaw tightened as he watched himself on screen, but his voice remained defiant. "So you can see I'm just using the facilities on screen." Derek approached the faucet and tested it gently. Water flowed perfectly when he turned it on, stopped cleanly when he turned it off. The fixture worked flawlessly. "Interesting," I observed. "The faucet seems to be functioning normally." Lindsay leaned closer to the screen, her brow furrowed in concentration.
I don't understand what we're supposed to be seeing.
"Keep watching," I suggested, my finger hovering over the play button. "The interesting part is coming up." Derek shifted in his seat, his earlier confidence cracking around the edges.
This is ridiculous.
"You're making a mountain out of a molehill over a simple plumbing problem." But his eyes never left the screen, and I could see the exact moment he remembered what was about to happen, what the cameras had captured, what his arrogance had made him forget in his moment of vindictive satisfaction. "The timestamp here shows 15:52, I continued, my voice perfectly calm. Watch carefully. The video played in crystal clearer detail. 8 cameras worth of evidence about to destroy Derek's comfortable world of lies and assumptions. On the tablet screen, Derek glanced toward the door, confirming he was alone. Then his whole demeanor changed. Gone was any pretense of normal use. This was deliberate, calculated destruction.
"Oh my God!" Sarah whispered as we watched Derek grip the faucet handle with both hands and wrench it violently to the side.
The audio was crystal clear, the grinding of metal under excessive force, the sharp crack when something gave way inside the mechanism. Derek's satisfied grunt as he felt the fixture break beneath his hands.
"Derek!"
William's voice cracked like a whip.
"What the hell are you doing?" On screen, Derek wasn't finished.
He braced his foot against the cabinet for leverage, applying even more force until the internal valve mechanism snapped completely. Water began streaming uncontrollably from the broken fixture. Lindsay's hand flew to her mouth.
This can't be."
But there was no denying what we were all seeing. Derek stepped back from his handiwork with unmistakable satisfaction, that same smug smile he'd worn when he returned to the table. He even ran his finger along the base of the faucet, checking for evidence of his sabotage. "The timestamp shows 15:54, I said quietly. "You spent 4 minutes deliberately destroying my property." Derek's face had gone chalk white. There's an explanation."
"I was trying to fix it when it fixed what?"
William's voice was deadly quiet. "The footage clearly shows it working perfectly before you touched it." On screen, Derek was wiping away metal shavings with a dish towel, methodically cleaning up evidence of his sabotage. His movements were careful, practiced, the actions of someone who knew exactly what he'd done and wanted to hide it. "You even brought a towel to clean up?" I observed. "Very thorough."
Lindsay was staring at the screen in shock.
"Derek, how could you? This is Dad's rental. He'll have to pay for damages." The irony of her words protecting me from financial responsibility for damage to my own yacht would have been amusing under different circumstances. Derek's confident mask had completely crumbled. "It's not what it looks like."
"I was trying to help and it broke and I panicked."
"You panicked?" William leaned forward, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Son, we just watched you deliberately destroy someone else's property."
"There's no accident here. No misunderstanding."
Sarah was dabbing at her eyes with her napkin.
"Ronald, I'm so ashamed. I don't know what to say."
Derek made one last desperate attempt at defense. The faucet was obviously defective.
"I barely touched it and it broke."
"These old boats have problems, Derek." I stopped the video and turned the tablet toward him. "Would you like me to play it again? Perhaps in slow motion this time. We can count exactly how many times you wrenched the handle before it broke." The silence that followed was deafening. Derek stared at the frozen image on the screen himself, caught in the act of deliberate sabotage, his face showing clear satisfaction at the damage he'd caused. "I think," William said slowly, his voice thick with disgust, "we needed to discuss this situation very seriously." Derek's last thread of bravado snapped. "Fine. Yes, I broke the damn faucet, but can you blame me? Ronald's been acting like some kind of yacht club millionaire all day, throwing money around on rentals he can't afford, trying to make the rest of us feel small." The admission hung in the air like poison gas. Even Derek seemed shocked that he'd finally said it out loud. Lindsay was staring at her husband like she'd never seen him before.
"You did this on purpose? To hurt my father?"
To teach him a lesson about living within his means? Derek shot back, his true nature finally emerging without disguise.
"About not pretending to be something he's not."
The perfect opening. I closed the tablet and smiled for the first time all day. "Well, Derek," I said quietly, "speaking of pretending to be something you're not, I think it's time we discussed exactly what you don't know about this situation." Derek's hands were shaking as he leaned forward in his chair, trying to salvage what remained of his dignity. "Look, Ronald, maybe I got a little carried away, but it's just a minor repair on a rental boat. These things happen. Just a minor repair."
"On a rental boat?"
The words hung in the air like the smell of sulfur after lightning strikes. "You're absolutely right," I said quietly, watching his face carefully. "This is about understanding what kind of person vandalizes someone else's property for sport. Vandalizes? Derek's voice cracked slightly.
Come on, that's a strong word. I was frustrated. Maybe I used a little too much force, but let's keep this in perspective. We're talking about a weekend rental here.
William shifted uncomfortably in his seat.
Son, we all saw the video. There's no excuse for Dad, please.
Derek's mask was slipping further with each word.
I made a mistake, okay?
But Ronald's acting like I burned down his house. It's a rented yacht. The insurance will cover it. Rich guys like the owner probably write this stuff off his business expenses anyway. Rich guys like the owner. The irony was so perfect it felt scripted. You keep mentioning that this is a rental, I observed, picking up my tablet and setting it aside with deliberate care. You seem very concerned about the financial implications for the owner. Well, yeah, Derek straightened slightly, sensing an opportunity to regain moral high ground.
I mean, you're obviously way over your budget here, Ronald.
This whole yacht club fantasy, it's not sustainable. Someone like you trying to play millionaire for a weekend, it's just sad. Lindsay winced visibly. Derek, please don't. Someone like me, I repeated softly. Look, no offense, but let's be realistic. Derek was warming to his theme now, the familiar arrogance creeping back into his voice.
You're a retired what? Plumber?
Carpenter living on Social Security, trying to impress us with boats you can't afford.
It's embarrassing.
Sarah gasped audibly. William's face had gone red with shame. But Derek wasn't finished. Guys like you don't belong on yachts like this. You belong in fishing boats. Maybe a pontoon if you save up. This he gestured around the elegant cabin. This is for people who actually earned it. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the gentle lapping of water against the hull seemed to pause, waiting for what came next.
I stood, slowly my hands steady, my voice calm as morning misted. Derek, I said.
This is my yacht. The words dropped like anvils into still water. Derek's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again without sound emerging. Lindsay's hand flew to her chest. William looked like he'd been struck by lightning.
Your what? Derek's voice was barely a whisper.
My yacht, I repeated clearly. I bought it in March for $2.8 million cash. The colour drained from Derek's face so quickly I thought he might faint.
That's not possible.
The Serenity is registered in my name with the Coast Guard. The marina has my credit card on file for monthly slip fees. The insurance policy lists me as sole owner. I let each fact settle before continuing. I purchased it as a gift. Lindsay found her voice first.
A gift for who?
I looked directly at Derek, watching understanding dawn in his eyes like sunrise over a cemetery. For you and your husband, I said simply. I was planning to surprise you today, present it as a rental first, then reveal that it was yours to keep. The sound Lindsay made was somewhere between a sob and a gasp. Derek had gone completely white, his mouth working soundlessly. $2.8 million, William said slowly, his voice thick with dawning horror. You were going to give them a $2.8 million yacht, plus another $140,000 in direct financial support over the years, I added conversationally. Graduate school, wedding, house down payment, various emergencies.
I kept careful records.
Derek finally found his voice.
I didn't. We had no idea.
No, I agreed. You had no idea that the plumber you've been mocking all afternoon was planning to give you a yacht worth more than most people's houses. The irony settled over the cabin like fog. Derek had spent the day sabotaging and mocking the very man who'd intended to make him a millionaire. Ronald, Sarah whispered, tears starting in her eyes. We're so sorry. But I was still looking at Derek, watching him process the full magnitude of what his arrogance had cost him. I corrected gently, was planning to give you a yacht. Derek's face went through a spectrum of emotions. Shock, disbelief, calculation, and finally desperate panic as the full implications hit him. Wait, he said, lurching forward in his chair. You said was planning. That doesn't mean, we can work this out right now that I understand the situation. Now that you understand the situation, I repeated quietly, what exactly do you understand? That I made a terrible mistake.
I had no idea this was your yacht, Ronald.
If you'd known I owned it, you would have treated me with respect. I let the question hang in the air. But since you thought I was just some poor retiree playing above his station, disrespect was acceptable. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Beside him, Lindsay was staring at her hands, finally beginning to understand the choice she'd made between her husband and her father.
That's not what I meant, Derek stammered. Just the stress of work and seeing you spend so much on a rental when what?
William interrupted, his voice sharp with disappointment. When you decided your father-in-law needed to be taught a lesson about his place. Sarah was dabbing her eyes with a tissue.
Derek, how could you do this?
Ronald has been nothing but generous to this family.
I know that now.
Derek's voice cracked with desperation. But we can fix this, right? I'll pay for the faucet repair. Hell, I'll pay for a complete renovation of the galley. We can put this behind us. I walked to the yacht's large window, looking out at the peaceful harbour, where other families were enjoying their boats without sabotage or disrespect clouding their afternoons. The faucet is already repaired, I said calmly. Took about 20 minutes. Marine fixtures are built tough. They have to be to withstand the kind of deliberate abuse you inflicted. And what's the problem? Derek's voice carried a note of desperate hope. No harm, no foul, right? I turned back to face him. The problem, Derek, is that you revealed exactly who you are. When you thought I was vulnerable, when you believed I was beneath you, you chose cruelty.
That's not a faucet problem. That's a character problem.
Lindsay finally looked up from her hands. Dad, I know Derek was wrong, but what, sweetheart?
I asked gently.
But I should overlook deliberate sabotage because he apologized after getting caught. But I should ignore years of subtle disrespect because he promises to do better now that he knows I have money. She had no answer for that.
None of them did.
The yacht remains mine, I continued. The gift offer is permanently withdrawn. Derek, I think it would be best if you and Lindsay gathered your things and left. You can't be serious, Derek protested.
Over one stupid mistake. One stupid mistake?
William's voice was incredulous. Son, you deliberately vandalized a man's property after he invited you aboard as a guest. You've spent the afternoon mocking and belittling him. Even now, you're more concerned about losing a gift you never knew existed than about the hurt you've caused. Derek looked around the table, seeking support that wasn't there. Even Lindsay couldn't meet his eyes. Fine, he said finally, standing abruptly.
Come on, Lindsay.
Let's get out of here. Lindsay stood slowly, looking torn between following her husband and staying with her father. Dad, you made your choice clear today, I said softly. I hope it was worth it. As Derek and Lindsay gathered their belongings and headed toward the gangway, William approached me. Ronald, I can't begin to express how ashamed I am of my son's behavior.
If you'd prefer us to leave as well? Absolutely not, I said firmly.
You and Sarah have shown nothing but respect and grace. Please stay. Let's enjoy the rest of this beautiful afternoon as it was meant to be enjoyed. Through the window, I watched Derek and Lindsay walking down the dock toward the parking area, Derek gesticulating angrily while Lindsay walked in silence. They looked small against the backdrop of the harbour, diminished by their own choices. Sarah joined William and me at the window. Do you think they'll be all right? Derek will land on his feet, I said. Men like him always do.
As for Lindsay, I sighed. She'll have to decide whether she wants to build a life with someone who destroys bridges out of spite.
William poured 3 glasses of wine from the bottle we'd opened earlier. To character, he said simply. To character, Sarah and I echoed. As the sun moved lower toward the horizon, painting the water in shades of gold and amber, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Perfect peace. Justice had been served not through revenge, but through natural consequences. Derek had destroyed his own inheritance with his own hands, just as surely as he destroyed that faucet. The brass compass caught the afternoon light one more time, pointing true north as always. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.